Wonderful. Well, this is delightful to have everybody here today. My name is Jennifer Thompson, and I'd like to welcome and thank you all for attending Missoula in Motion's Transportation Best Practices Award Luncheon. We're fortunate to have with us today some very special guests, and I'd like to take just a few minutes to introduce them and thank them for their attendance here today. And I believe a couple of them do have a few brief words to say. We have representatives from our congressional delegation, and we welcome Lauren Caldwell from Senator Max Baucus's office.
Hi, my name is Lauren Caldwell. I'm a field representative for Senator Baucus here in the Missoula area. And when we come to events like this that he unfortunately can't be at, we bring messages from him. And I know Deb Franson from Tester's office has got one as well. So this is a message from Max. Dear friends, I'm sorry I can't be with you today to celebrate all these movers and shakers who are making Missoula a safer, friendlier, more sustainable, and less congested place to commute. Congratulations to all the nominees. I'd like to thank Alexandria Stockman and everyone at Missoula in Motion who worked so hard to make these events happen. What strikes me about this group is that it started so small with a great idea and now includes more than 1,800 members of the Way to Go Club. As some of you may know, I walked across Montana in 1974. Talk about a long walk to work. In all sincerity, some of my best memories of the state that I love come from walking, excuse me, I'm fighting an illness here. That I love come from walking and talking with the warm, hospitable folks across Big Sky Country. I've also been an avid runner my whole life and can tell you that taking the time to move outside of our cars has a tremendous effect on our well-being. I'm proud to support your efforts to make Missoula an even better place to live, work, and raise a family. And if your travels ever bring you to D.C. when the Senate is in session, please come by my office on Wednesday mornings for a Montana breakfast at 8:15. All the best, Max Baucus. Thank you.
And next up is Deborah Franson from Senator Jon Tester's office.
Thank you all very much. My name is Deborah Franson. I'm a field representative for Senator Tester. Our office is over by next door to the Top Hat Bar. Two very separate buildings, and any tales you've heard about a pass-through window are simply not true. In any event, I hope if we can be of any help to you, any of your customers, your friends, with a federal agency, Medicare, Social Security, VA, or something like that, that you will visit one of or both of the Senate's offices, because we're here to help you. And Senator Tester, sorry he can't be here, but he asked me to tell you, thanks for inviting me to share a few words. Let me start by saying thank you to everyone here today for your commitment to incorporating sustainable transportation into your daily commute. And a special thanks to the great folks at Missoula in Motion for continuing to lead the way in coming up with unique ways to motivate and educate folks about alternative forms of transportation. Your efforts to make Missoula such a pedestrian and bike-friendly town have resulted in a great place to live, work, and raise a family. Congratulations to the award nominees and the award's recipients for your commitment to the long-term health of our environment and Missoula citizens. Stay in touch. Sincerely, Jon Tester. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to attach this and see if it still works. Can everybody still hear me? Okay. All right, thank you to our congressional delegation for their support. We also have Missoula County Commissioners here with us today, Gene Curtis, Bill Carey, and Michelle Landquist. And coming... And we're very fortunate that Pam Walzer, Ward 2 for the City Council, is here as well. Pam, thank you. To my left, you've noticed that I am not up here alone, thank goodness. Oh, thank you all for that, knowing that too. Today we have with us Charles Demke, Robert Shepard, and Kurt Keller to talk about sustainable transportation, your path to worksite wellness. Charles is an associate professor in the Department of Health and Human Performance at the University of Montana. He received his doctorate from the University of Wisconsin in 2000 while studying the effects of Exercise on Diabetes. He was a professor at Appalachian State for 8 years before coming to the University of Montana, where he had received his master's degree previously 15 years ago. Dr. Damke has published over 50 peer-reviewed research articles on many facets of exercise physiology and nutrition. He specializes in fuel utilization, exercise nutrition, movement economy, diabetes, and the mechanisms that underlie the adaptation to exercise training. He likes to think that he practices what he preaches. He enjoys just about anything outdoors, including running, biking, hiking, kayaking, camping, hunting. Chuck has been competing in multi-sport events for over 17 years. Lately, however, chasing around his 2-year-old son, Carter, has been probably his most active source of physical activity. Dr. Robert Shepard is a family practice physician in Helena, Montana. He graduated from Harvard University with a degree in biochemistry and from Baylor College of Medicine with an MD degree. He is board certified in family practice, and he was the leader in the campaign for Helena's smoke-free ordinance. He is co-author of the landmark Helena Heart Attack Study, and he currently serves as medical director at New West Health Services. Dr. Shepard has helped start the wellness program for New West members and employees. He's helped lead wellness initiatives for both exercise and eating for New West employees. He enjoys exercising because keeping fit allows him and his wife to enjoy the many activities in Montana. He bicycles to work regularly, yay! He enjoys hiking, backpacking, skiing, and running. And he has participated in the Governor's Cup in Helena for 30 consecutive years. That's probably the most impressive feat of the morning so far. Kurt Keller has 25 years experience in human resources, employee benefits, and worksite health promotion. He's currently serving as lead health strategist for Two Medicine Health, a preventative health company serving clients across the region. His services include consultation and support to employers engaging in worksite health promotion. Kirk has directed numerous clients and their programs to levels of positive returns and award recognition. His experience includes service in finance, healthcare, mining, and higher education. He also teaches at Montana State University Bozeman as an adjunct instructor in the Health and Human Development Department. Kirk has served since 2004 as Montana Worksite Health Promotion Council member. In 2009, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award for his contributions to worksite health promotion in Montana. For recreation, Kirk enjoys running the trails in southwest Montana, coaching runners interested in having fun with their training, and racing, and building with wood. Without further ado, I turn the floor over to Charles, who will begin today's presentations.
So it projects.
Yeah. Look at what you think it should.
Yep. I'd like to, wow, that's loud, sorry. I'd like to thank Missoula in Motion for inviting us here to give a talk. I know we're here to reward transportation best practices, so this is kind of a preaching to the choir sort of situation. But you know, the other speakers and I were talking at the beginning, and employers are often at the front lines of, you know, involving healthy practices, you know, because my students, you know, the ones that we train over at the university, are often not seeing people until they're already unhealthy, right? So to promote and encourage best practices is a very important part of today's healthcare practice. And these guys know much more about healthcare than I do, but that doesn't mean I don't have something to say, perhaps. So, I did want to point out, this is not a means of chest thumping, these acronyms here. This one here is a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine. You see the little logo up there. And this is the organization that you'll often hear about, you know, experts have come out and said that you need to do this to not be obese. Or, you know, there's a new position stand on weight training and physical activity and those sort of physical activity guidelines, okay? And I'm going to bring up some new initiatives by this governing body here in a minute. So, there's a famous saying in our field of exercise physiology, right? If you don't have time for exercise, you better have time for disease. I think it was Per Olaf Astrand that first said that. And it's true. And it's unfortunate that over time, and the human predisposition is to try to avoid doing things, make things easier, You'll notice down here, you might miss it, but these are people taking an escalator up to work out, all right? Avoiding the stairs, okay? And that kind of speaks to what Americans want. They'd much rather take a pill, okay? They'd much rather sit at their desks and send an email to the adjoining cubicle, okay? So it's unfortunate that that's true. Now, I do teach a lot about nutrition, and of course, childhood obesity is a problem, but I left that up there to kind of remind everybody that there is certainly an interaction between the two. But today we're going to talk mostly about physical activity. And, you know, I'm sure you might be aware of some of these stats. You know, these are actual causes of death. And you see these numbers up here, 400, 435. Notice that that's times 1,000, right? And this is per year. And you notice tobacco is the top one, top killer in America. But also, right below it, not too far behind in second place, is inactivity and poor diet. Okay? And then there's a major fall off to the third leader, which is alcohol. Notice those top three, and especially the top two, are both what we often call lifestyle diseases, meaning these are choices people make that leads them to disease. And that's a big problem in today's healthcare and you know, all the things that our next two speakers will talk about. So there is a direct correlation in between the selection of being physically inactive and the onset of symptoms of certain diseases. Now, I wouldn't be a scientist if I didn't show you at least a few graphs, okay? And you'll notice over here, relative incidence of myocardial infarction, okay, MIs or heart attacks. This was a landmark study back in the 50s where they actually compared, and my purpose of showing this to you is that a lot of people think of physical activity as what they do away from work, okay? Turns out that work can relate to people's physical inactivity. And what they did is, this was done in London. They compared the drivers of the double-decker red buses to the ticket takers. And they saw that the incidence of heart attacks was over 2.5 times greater, or almost 2.5 times greater, than the ticket takers. So the drivers who were sitting there not getting any physical activity were at a much greater risk of death, okay? So to think that physical activity is on totally your employee's responsibility may be short-sighted, as it can be related to their work. And this is where I'm going to introduce one of those initiatives called Exercise is Medicine. This is an initiative by the ex-president of our American College of Sports Medicine, Robert Salas. And he said, what if there's a prescription that could prevent and treat dozens of diseases, diabetes, hypertension, some cancers, obesity, okay? Well, turns out there is, okay? And that's where he came up with this idea of exercise as medicine. Now, this is meant to kind of be to a room full of doctors, but nonetheless, it also brings some importance to physical activity and health. So there's tremendous health benefits seen with even low levels of activity, okay? The amount of exercise needed to benefit health is much lower than needed for fitness. I don't know how many of you have traveled to other countries or have friends from other countries, but it's often an observation from people outside of America that America is filled with the hyper-fit and the hyper-sedentary, right? And there doesn't appear to be anybody in between. And that's unfortunate because that's where people become healthy or can become healthy. It's much more important to be fit and fat than lean and unhealthy, okay? We got a lot of hubbub last summer when the New York Times came out with that article, exercise doesn't cause weight loss, okay? How many people remember that, okay? It's unfortunate because the prescription that we have come out with our physical activity guidelines are not necessarily to lose weight. And people always think about exercise and losing weight. Exercise has a capability of making you healthy without any changes in your scale weight, all right? So it is a powerful tool. And you can see, you know, some of that power down here. And we're not going to go over all these, but Some of the things that you might not be aware of, colon cancer can reduce the risk by 60%, lowers the risk of stroke by 27%, diabetes by 50%, even higher in some populations who are at greater risk. I'm not advancing. There we go. And this is, what we know in science as a dose-response curve, okay? And this refers back to that observation of the hyperfit and the hypersedentary, okay? It's getting the people off the couch who are performing low levels of baseline activity that see the greatest benefits of exercise in reducing symptoms of disease, okay? People who are highly fit see a much lessened response by getting even more fit. Do you see what I'm saying? So the goal of bringing the sedentary up to the middle range of this graph is what physical activity has the power to do, okay? And this is what I was referring to where, there's a lot of people who avoid activity because, they get an onslaught from our media that they have to look like a fitness model if they're going to be exercise, okay? And all these other concepts and predispositions people have about exercise. Well, if I exercise, I gotta buy a health club membership, and that's expensive, and I gotta drive there to get there, and all those sorts of considerations. Those are all barriers, and we talk with our students all the time, how do you overcome those barriers? But it also relates to encouraging physical activity at the workplace. So the solution can be physical activity. If we had a pill that gave all these benefits and was readily available, doctors would be prescribing it to everybody, all right? But they're not. But that's part of the goal of the initiative of Exercise is Medicine, is to make doctors more aware that they can use physical activity as a prevention tool. Why isn't it happening? And we could spend the rest of the day talking about why this is. And these guys have a lot of opinions about that as well. Okay? But media advocacy, no tangible success measures, right? If they don't see their scale weight going down, they don't believe they're getting healthy. Physicians are lacking the time, right? We were talking about this with the other speakers before. They have to see a patient once every, I think, 12 minutes or something like that, and they have to flip them over. They lack the proper training. Currently, medical schools do not have curriculums that engage physical activity and exercise physiology. No national reimbursement policy. Okay, this is another initiative of this Exercise is Medicine, is to get the government to recognize, and we lost one of our council members, physical inactivity as a disease itself. Okay, why are we interested in that? Why are we interested in the government recognizing physical inactivity as a disease? Because then we can get funding to study it, right? Right now, you heard in my bio I studied diabetes, and I can apply that to diabetes. But to study physical inactivity as it relates to all of these diseases is a much harder way for people in my field to get funding to do research. So this brings us to the guidelines, okay? And the American College of Sports Medicine, the American Health Association, and the CDC have all been involved in developing these physical activity guidelines. Now, Dr. Shepard's going to talk more about this. I'm only going to briefly touch on it, right? But you've probably heard already that, you should accumulate about 150 minutes a week of being physically active, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to translate that, okay? And depending on the person, that relates to about 200 to 300 kcals a day, or kilocalories a day of energy expenditure, all right? Now, I'm not going to try to make you familiar with kilocalories, but if you've ever worked on a treadmill, it's often telling you, you've burned this many calories, or are burning this many calories per minute at this time, And I'll try to give you a feel of what that means here in a minute. So, we're blessed in Missoula, okay? I spent 8 years at Appalachian State, which is in the mountains of the Appalachian Mountains, right? And they don't have sidewalks, okay? They don't have even shoulders on the road to ride your bike. People thought I was crazy to ride my bike 2 miles to work, okay? We are blessed here. We have a great trail system, okay? We have, sidewalks. We have huge bike lanes, all right? I'm sure you're all aware you've gone to other cities and you come back realizing how blessed we are in Missoula. So there's lots of different ways, and this is where I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. You're all here because of good transportation practices, right? And so you know about this, but one, we certainly want to reward and congrats to the city of Missoula for the North Higgins Improvement Project, right? Again, contributing and promoting non-vehicular modes of transportation, be it foot or bike. But people are always aware, I know you're into commuting, right? That's why we're here, transportation practices. So how does that relate to the American College of Sports Medicine physical activity guidelines? Well, if you can promote commuting that results in 30 minutes of walking, okay, and because walking is a weight-bearing exercise, that affects the kcal expenditure, right? But if it takes you 30 minutes to walk to work, that can be about 115 or so kcals if you're closer to 100 pounds, or over 200 if you're closer to 200 pounds. Okay? So it's, by itself, it can meet the American College of Sports Medicine recommendations for physical activity for alleviating symptoms of disease. Okay? Just simply getting to work. And of course, you know, these kcals, again, I don't mean to try to make you experts in kcal calculations, but you know, as I mentioned, it's dependent on your body weight and obviously the distance you travel. But even just getting to work can help you meet these guidelines. Some of you like to bike. I know I'm a biker, right? 30 minutes of biking at a leisurely pace burns about 200. So therefore, to go to and from work, you're over 400. Again, more than meeting the physical activity guidelines, okay? So that is a very effective way of meeting the guidelines. So a lot of people always use excuses, right? We don't have bike lanes. It's too cold outside. I show up sweaty. All of these sort of considerations. You know, there's a lot of websites, including probably adventure cyclists, that have, you know, ideas about how to overcome these barriers. However, you know, it sounds like a lot of time, but in most cities, a less than 3-mile commute, right, ends up being about the same time as a car, right? And oftentimes, if you're taking roads that don't have lights and take alternative ways to get there, you can actually get there quicker, all right? 5 to 7 miles is usually about the same, you know, when you consider an urban area with lights and stop signs. And in fact, I found a good quote from the American League of Cyclists, okay? My 7-mile commute takes about 30 minutes on a bike and about 20 minutes in a car. Okay, that's on a good traffic day. So the bike is a little bit slower, but here's the cool part. I'm getting 60 minutes of exercise every day, but I'm only paying 20 minutes for it, right? I would have been in the car doing nothing for 40 minutes anyway. So that's a 300% return on my investment, okay? So I thought that spoke to the effectiveness of it very well. And again, meets the guidelines, helps that person alleviate symptoms of disease. So, how can you, the businesses, support commuting? And again, I know a lot of you are doing great things already. In fact, a lot of your nominations are involved in this. Provide lockers, showers, place to keep clothes, okay? You know, and this is where good brainstorming and people around your table maybe during discussion time can help kind of figure out new ways. And I know Kurt Keller has a lot of good ideas this way as well. Provide bike tools, places to fix flats, all right? Safe and convenient place to store bikes, and this is where a lot of your nominations went. You wanted reward money to spend on new and better bike racks, and that's fantastic. You know, the bike rack nominations from Missoula Osprey, Rocky Mountain Photography, Holiday Inn, Spirit of Play, Sussex School. Okay, that's all very effective in promoting getting to your business or place of school with alternative transportation. Provide a company bike to carry out quick errands. Some of the nominations did that, where they had a bike if you needed to run over to Warden's even, you know, to get a sandwich. You can use a bike to do that. Reward employees who choose to commute, okay? This is done very effectively by some people in the room. This can be monetary, it can be gift certificates, it can be supplying danishes to those who commute to work. All right? Free coffee, okay? It can be a number of different creative ways that don't have to be excessively expensive. In fact, the Ecology Project International nomination has some really good ways of doing this, where they reward people who accumulate commuting days the most. And you can speak to them, they're over here at this table, about their creative ways of doing that. How else? A bike subsidy. The Forest Service nomination gives out $20 per month for bike expenses. You know, buying new tubes and fixing flats and getting tune-ups and those sorts of things, which can be an effective way. A lot of people use, well, my bike is rusty and old and I don't want to ride it, right? This can help alleviate some of those barriers. Advertise, provide information about National Bike to Work Week or other programs that promote commuting, okay? How to overcome barriers that people perceive as keeping them from commuting, okay? Free helmets, loaner bikes, okay, all can be effective. Offer incentives to your customers, you know, the people who come to your business by alternative means, okay? Missoula Osprey did this very effectively with their nomination, where they gave incentives to people who came to their events on a bicycle. So that's how you get to work, okay? And I know you've probably all been very sort of effective or have been working towards commuting. That's why you're here at this luncheon. So you see this, you know, I suppose it was only a matter of time before our sedentary lifestyle adversely affected the quality of our health, right? But what about at work? Okay? So there has been indications that prolonged bouts of sitting are strongly associated with obesity, abnormal glucose metabolism, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, risk, and cancer, okay? But this can be independent of actual fitness. So if you're fit, but you're still sitting 8 hours a day, you can still not be effectively adjusting those symptoms of disease. So this is where, this isn't working very well, the expression of sedentary behavior has been misleading. It's been used as a synonym for not exercising. But as it turns out, sitting time can be dangerous even to the fit individuals. All right, I say this as everybody's sitting here listening to me, right? So this is relative risk. And notice daily sitting time as you go from low to high increases both cardiovascular mortality and fatal myocardial infarction or heart attack. Okay? So the time spent sitting can be as dangerous as being inactive as well. And notice what happens. Now this looks like a really busy graph and I'm already getting the signal for time, but I think I got gypped by some of my time. Notice here we have total physical activity, okay, in met hours a week. So just know that the people on this side are accumulating a lot of physical activity. They're pretty fit people, where on this side they're not. And notice these bars. These are people who spend less than 3 hours time of sitting, 3 to 5, and more than 6 hours time sitting during the day. And notice that in each group, right, as we move from the least fit to the most fit, show that the more time you sit, the greater, and you might not know what multivariate rate ratio is, but just assume that it is death rate, right? You're predisposing yourself to die if you sit a lot, is what it comes down to. And that can be, as this points out, independent of fitness. So then there becomes new recommendations. What can businesses do when their employees are at work? Not just getting them to work, but when they're at work. And, you know, fine, desert me and go back to computers, but I'm warning you, your blogging is killing good old-fashioned water cooler chit-chat and getting up out of your seat. Okay? Encourage employees to interrupt sitting as much as possible. And there can be all sorts of creative ways of doing this. Moving the copier, moving the water cooler, making them get up out of their seats. And as I've already pointed out, run errands by bike and foot instead of car. Allow scheduled breaks every 2 hours. Now this may or may not be salient to certain businesses. You know, some of them are already active, but nonetheless, if you're a cubicle sort of business, this can be important. Encourage employees to step away from desks during breaks, not just go to Facebook and email and other websites, ESPN or whatever. Okay, encourage employees to stand up and move around during the day. Okay, encourage employees to use a portion of lunchtime breaks for physical activity. encourage employees to read or work, even just standing at their desk. That in itself can be effective, just getting up and breaking up that sitting behavior. All right. Don't send emails across cubicles, right? Just get up and go over and talk to your workmate. Okay? Now this is more as a segue. I'm going to be finishing up here. More as a segue to Dr. Shepard's talk. Can physical fitness actually make you smarter? All right? This is something that a lot of people may not think about, and not because you're not physically fit. All right? Some of the most compelling data actually comes from, see, this is why I'm going over time, school systems, okay? And I'll show you this. This has to do with standardized test scores, okay, and fitness standards. Notice that as the number of fitness standards achieves, so do test scores. Now, a lot of you might think, well, that's a socioeconomic problem or issue, or that's because of something else. But Dr. Shepard is going to provide some compelling data that it's physiological. Similarly, you also might think, well, yeah, but in Missoula, we're really fit, right? There is a Missoula-tude, admit it, right? I know about it. Turns out, though, we're not immune to these symptoms of disease. This is from a colleague of mine. Notice up here, physical activity in Missoula youth in high school. This is the percent that meet health guidelines and the percent that meet fitness guidelines. 10% and less. Okay? Scary, scary statistics. And they're also not immune to this effect of physical activity and grade point average. Notice that as grades go up and physical activity is higher in these, what is that, maroon bars, so is their grade point averages. Okay? So that's again more of a segue to Dr. Shepard. So, my wrap-up slide, right? Reasons to be involved in the fitness of your employees. Reduced absenteeism. I haven't provided a lot of compelling data for all of this, but these have been shown in real research studies. Reduced absenteeism, increased energy, right? Improved self-confidence. Better to learn new tasks. People who are more fit have been shown to actually learn better. More leaders. People who are physically active tend to take leadership roles. Better goal achievers. Okay? Better attitudes. Less stressed. Less employee turnover. They might even be smarter, which you might not have known walking in these doors. Okay? And, as these next two speakers might give some lip service to, it might even save you some money. Okay? So, with that, I'll wrap up and pass over the baton to Dr. Shepard. I don't think I want that one. Yeah, you did fine.
And while we're waiting to change out the slides, stand up. All right, sit down. Now stand up again. Somebody's got to be a cheerleader here. Okay, I'm going to talk, let's see, do I need to hit a button here to turn that on? Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the medical side of this because that's kind of what I do, and I'm, unlike Chuck, I'm not an exercise physiologist, but it's always interesting to learn more about that piece of it. I'm going to start out with the question why. The one-liner joke is, you know, I occasionally get the feeling I need to exercise, but then I lie down until it goes away. And that's really what part of the problem is. So what part of my goal is here is an individual motivation. And the things that I'm going to talk about are also things that you can take to your employees and talk to them about, because all of this is really important. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the benefits of exercise. Chuck's touched on a lot of that. I want to talk a little bit more, though, about how you measure it. So if we say you need 150 minutes a week of exercise, what does that really mean? And then lastly, I want to talk about what does it take really to get these benefits and how we get there. So let's get started on that. First of all, I'm just going to run through a laundry list of benefits. This is not an exhaustive list. I got tired after 2 slides worth. But obviously it helps you manage your weight, okay? And I emphasize the word manage. If you go back to Chuck's kilocalorie calculation and you go out and walk for a half an hour and cover a mile and do 200 kilocalories, you've just done one chocolate chip cookie. Our bodies can be incredibly efficient when it comes to using the calories that we eat for energy output. If you want to lose weight, you got to stop eating. But if you want to manage your weight, you can certainly help yourself by increasing your calorie output. Obviously, people who exercise more will tell you uniformly, I feel like I've got a lot more energy, I don't feel so tired anymore, I certainly sleep better at night, and so forth and so on. It's also very important for chronic disease. And as we head into this century where we're going to have 40% of our population clinically obese with a BMI in excess of 30, and a large number of people, 30% or more, with a BMI in excess of 40. And I'm not going to go into what a BMI is, but anything over 25 is overweight. So we got people in 30s and 40s and 50s all the time. As we go into that, we develop metabolic syndrome, we develop heart disease, and it increases your risk of cancer. And at any given weight, I'm going to reemphasize this a couple of times, at any given weight, the more active you are, the less risk you have. So you don't have to lose weight, you have to move. Osteoporosis, another big problem. Both men and women, by the way, we tend to focus a lot on women and osteoporosis, but there are a significant number of men over the age of 50 that develop osteoporosis as well, and exercise helps combat that as well. How about depression? No question about it. The studies are very clear. People who are chronically depressed do better when they exercise. It's often very, very difficult to get them motivated to do that, but the more they exercise, the better off they're going to be. Same thing applies to anxiety. Manic depressive and other kinds of emotional illnesses can really make a difference. And it does boost your immune system. People who exercise frequently tend to get ill less. They get fewer colds, they get fewer flu, they get other things. There are lots of benefits in that way. So now, if I haven't tweaked your interest at this point, I got two more reasons for you to think about exercising. Okay? One is it does help your sex life. Okay? Now, I have to say, I will apologize on behalf of the researchers. Most of this work has been done, as you might expect, in men. And I apologize for that. But clearly, when men exercise, the incidence of erectile dysfunction is a lot lower. In fact, exercise is every bit as good as Viagra or Cialis in terms of improving exercise performance. What studies have been done in women suggest the same thing is true, but there just aren't been as many studies yet, and so that's a problem. And the one that Chuck already stole the thunder on, which I agree with, and I'm glad he emphasized it, is that exercise actually can make you smarter. Now I want to take a couple of these ideas and expound on them a little bit in just a minute, explain actually why. You know, when I say that exercise reduces your risk of heart disease, how do we know that? If I say that exercise makes you smarter, how do we know that? And I want to walk through a couple of those things and give you some idea of what the actual science is behind it, because I think the science is interesting and it also makes it more real. But I want to talk a little bit about exercise intensity first, because you have to be careful. If you start out and you're sedentary and you go down to the gym and get a personal trainer, and the next day after an hour's worth of workout, you're so stiff you can hardly move, that's not good. And I see a lot of people get frustrated after an experience like that. You have to take your time. If you're 40 and you want to be 80, you don't have to get in shape in 4 days, or 40 days, or 4 months. You just need to get in shape because you've got 40 more years that you're going to carry that forward. So if you get the intensity too high too quickly, you're going to get stiff and sore, or you're going to get injured. On the other hand, if you always keep the intensity too low, if it's always a slow stroll, you're not going to get the benefits either. So we have to create a balance, and you have to work your way up the scale until you're at an intensity level and a fitness level that feels good to you. It takes time and it takes patience. Now, how do we actually measure the intensity? Well, you can actually measure that by doing a Vmax. That is, measure the amount of oxygen that you're consuming. We know that when you exercise, you consume oxygen, you burn glucose, you burn fats. So you're burning things for energy, and we can look at how much carbon dioxide you're putting out, how much oxygen you're taking in, and we know precisely what the amount of work is that you do. So it's not that hard. You just have to put somebody in a mask and a machine to do that. That creates a little bit of complications because it takes the equipment to do it, but it allows us to measure what the exercise rates are for various types of activities. I want to talk just briefly about aerobic and anaerobic exercise, because when we're talking here, we're talking about aerobic exercise. And everybody's heard about aerobics. And the idea is you're working at a rate where your heart and lungs can supply enough oxygen to your muscles that you can stay even. As soon as your muscles are working harder and demanding more oxygen than your heart and lung can deliver to them, you cross over into anaerobic exercise. So you have to stay at your aerobic level, and we'll talk about how to figure that out in a minute. Okay, this leads to the concept of a metabolic equivalent task, and it's a little different approach than the kilocalorie idea, because if you weigh 200 pounds, you walk a mile, you're going to use twice as many calories as you weigh 100 pounds, you walk a mile, because you've moved more weight over that mile. What this is saying is that you get the same metabolic boost from the same activity regardless of your weight. So this is a way of rating what different activities are. So if you're sitting, you're using 1 MET. Sit for an hour, you've used a MET. To put that in perspective, if you sleep for an hour, you've used 0.9 METs. So if you're going to sit, you might as well lie down and take a nap. Okay? You've really got to get up and get moving. Okay. If you're walking at 2 miles an hour, you're at 2 METs, 3 miles an hour at 3 METs. If you're running 10-minute miles at 6 miles an hour, you get up to about 10 METs. Now, when we talk about exercise intensity and we talk about moderate exercise, we're talking about activities that are in the 3 to 5 to 7 range. And when we're talking about intensive activities, we're talking about activities that are 8, 9, or 10 METs an hour. Okay? So this gives us a measure of intensity. And this is important. And if you go on and you just Google METs exercise tables, you'll get any activity you want to. Somebody has taken that, put somebody on an oxygen mask like I just showed you, and figured out what the METs are for that particular task. However, this isn't very practical. Okay? So now we need some way of how do we actually relate this back to ourselves when we're doing our own activities. And we can use several different methods for actually measuring the intensity of exercise. There's a heart rate method, there's a perceived effort method, and then there's the talk test. Let me real quickly run through those. Heart rate. We want to target heart rate, okay? If you're a low fitness level, you may want to keep your rate at 50 to 60% of your maximum heart rate. We'll talk about that in a second. If you're intermediate, it might be 60 to 70%, and if you're advanced or very fit, you want to get your heart rate into 75 to 85% of your maximum heart rate. How do you know what your maximum heart rate is? Well, I did the calculation for me because I'm not embarrassed by the fact that I'm 63. You know, it's a victory, it's not a defeat. 220, you take 220 and just subtract your age. So 220 to 63 is 157. That means my theoretical maximum heart rate is 157. I can guarantee you I can get it higher than that. Either I'm younger or the formula is wrong. But in any case, it's 157. At 60%, that is low fitness level or very moderate activity, I get my heart up to 94, 70%, 110, anything over 133, I'm in a high intensity environment. 133, excuse me. I'm in a high intensity environment. Do the math once, for your age, you know about what your heart rate is, and by stopping periodically with an activity and measuring your heart rate, you're going to get an idea about what the intensity is of that activity. There's the perceived exertion method. And again, if you're breathing faster, you're developing a sweat, and you're feeling a little bit of strain in your muscles, and you just kind of go up the scale. Okay, as you go up the scale, like that, you can figure out where your exertion effort is, and that's another way of measuring it. And then there's the talk test. And basically, if you're having to take a breath between words, then you're exercising, at a higher level. And some people think that's too hard. Again, I think it depends on what the goal of that particular workout is. So we'll go from there. Okay, just to reiterate the activity recommendations. First of all, avoiding inactivity. Chuck made that point. I want to make that point. Any activity is better than none. Corollary of that is at any given weight, people who are more active are going to be more fit, are going to be healthier than people who are inactive. If you're 400 pounds and you walk every day, you're better off than if you're 400 pounds and you sit all day, period. No way around that, okay? Now, what you need is 150 minutes. That's 2 hours and 30 minutes a week of moderate intensity, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity. Notice that you have an option here. And you don't have to do either or. You can mix and match. So a lot of people find it's much better to mix their exercise routine a little bit and not do a high-intensity exercise every single day. And here we talk about the necessity of 10 minutes. There's a temptation to say, well, I'm going to do 315-second sprints. And that'll get you your 75 minutes. But really, you need to get some sustained exercise. Now, that isn't to say that you shouldn't park at the far end of the lot and walk in, take the stairs instead of the elevator, and so forth. All those little activities add up. But really, for this to count, you need to do it in episodes of a minimum of 10 minutes. Now, this is the minimum recommendation. It's kind of like fruits and vegetables. Everybody know you're supposed to eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day? Good. Actually, what they really wanted to do was have you eat 10, 9 or 10. But they knew nobody would eat 9 or 10. So they set it at 5 in hopes that a few people would make it that far, okay? Well, this is the minimum recommendation for exercise. What they really would like to see people do is get up to 300 minutes of moderate intensity. That's an hour, 5 days a week. Or 150 minutes of intense activity. That's 30 minutes of intense activity every day. The other important point is if you go beyond that, you still get more benefit. There really doesn't seem to be a top end here, barring injury. There doesn't seem to be a top end. And the other recommendation is muscle strengthening. Okay? It's not just doing this aerobic stuff, it's making your muscles stronger. This really, I'd never paid much attention to that. I was about 50 running across an airport carrying my bag and saying, why am I so short of breath? And I realized it was because I was carrying the bag. So I said, well, maybe what I need to do is start doing some weight exercises. And that really helped. Of course, so did buying a roller bag. Okay. Now, moderate intensity, vigorous intensity, you're going to get most of the benefits that I'm talking about in terms of your health with moderate intensity. But if weight loss is really a goal and you want exercise to drive that, you're going to have to get to high intensity exercise. And so many people just don't want to put that much effort into it, which is fine. Everybody should do what they're comfortable with as long as they're doing something. But if weight loss per se is a goal of exercise, you've got to get the intensity up or you won't lose weight. Okay, so how do we know? Well, we can divide our knowledge into 2 sort of big classes of knowledge. Some of it is direct experimentation, and some of it is what we call the study of disease in populations, or epidemiology. Some people dismiss that as statistics, but I'm here to tell you, epidemiology is an incredibly powerful tool for analyzing diseases. And I'm not going to spend any more time on it than that. I want to take a second, though, and talk a little bit about heart disease in the artery. An artery has 3 layers. There's a little tiny inner layer, which we call the endothelium. There's a middle muscle layer, and then there's a wrapping layer. Now, the muscle layer is what really controls the amount of the diameter of the artery. When the muscles relax, the artery expands and more blood goes through. And when the muscle contracts, the artery gets smaller and less blood goes through. And the body uses that mechanism to shunt blood all around the body. So if you're eating and you need more going to your stomach, you'll do that. And if you're exercising and you need more going to the muscles, it'll shunt it back that way. This muscle is controlled by 2 different mechanisms. One is the nerves that go to the muscles. They control that, and that is part of what controls our blood pressure. But the other thing that we're really getting a hold of right now is this little tiny layer on the inside. The endothelium secretes these hormones that allow the muscles to expand and contract. Now, what happens in heart disease is this endothelium gets damaged. Okay? What damages it? High blood pressure will damage it. Diabetes damages it because of the chemical changes. Cigarette smoking damages it because the chemicals in cigarette smoke are directly toxic to those cells, and so forth. When this thing gets damaged, you get a little tear in that wall, and cholesterol begins to leak into that. This area gets inflamed, it gets irritated, more cholesterol leaks in, and slowly over time, that begins to build up. Okay? Higher your cholesterol, the faster that buildup is. That's why high cholesterol is such a problem. So the question then becomes, how does exercise influence this? Well, first thing it does is it changes the cardiovascular system to lower the heart rate and reduce the blood pressure. Now let's go back here again. So what's happening then is right here, the hormones secreted by the lining and the nerves that go to the muscle layer reset that artery so that it's a little bit wider. It's good for your body, reduces your blood pressure, heart rate can slow down a little bit, and that's good. And that helps reduce the damage to this over time. Studies have been done on that time and time again. You put people on an exercise program, their blood pressure goes down. Okay, secondly, it reduces the inflammation. Remember I said that when this tear does occur, and it occurs in all of us, this is not a process that you can avoid. This is a certain age-related point of this, and the single greatest risk factor for heart disease is getting older. Not that you have a lot of other choices, but getting older is the single greatest risk factor. Well, you get this inflammation. Well, for ways that aren't entirely understood, it's very clear that exercises reduces the inflammation. There's a protein in the body, in the blood, that we call a C-reactive protein. You measure it in smokers, it's always high because their body has a lot of inflammation because of the cigarette smoke. But a lot of people walk around with high C-reactive proteins and they have a higher risk of heart disease because of that. Because when they do get a little cholesterol in those arteries, the artery gets inflamed, the cholesterol builds up more quickly. If you exercise, you get the same reduction in your C-reactive protein as if you take a statin. That is Lipitor or Crestor or any of those drugs, Vytorin, that you see on TV. Exercise is just as good in getting rid of that. Moreover, the epidemiologist will tell us that people who exercise regularly, that is 150 minutes a week, will live 3 to 7 years longer. Here's the kicker. Not only do they live longer, they're healthier. They have less chronic debilitating disease as they get older, and that's critical. Getting old and being very debilitated is tough. Getting old and not being so debilitated is only marginally less tough. Okay, studies have been shown very clearly that it also reduces triglycerides, that's the fat in your blood. It reduces your bad cholesterol, increases your good cholesterol. Again, all of that reduces the amount of buildup of exercise in the body, of cholesterol in the arteries. Some people are more sensitive to this than others, by the way. It doesn't work for everybody, but it's certainly better if you can go out and exercise and reduce your cholesterol and reduce your blood pressure and not take pills. Exercise is medicine. Okay. Again, people who have exercise have a lower risk. And lastly, exercise is fun. This is on a hike my wife and I took last summer to Thunderbolt Mountain, southwest of Helena. We round the corner, and here's this guy. He turns around immediately. I couldn't quite get my camera up in time to get him facing us. But he said, glad to enjoy the trail with you guys. I'll show you which way it's going, and he trots off the other way. But this is a motivator for me. And the reason I put this slide up is because I like doing this stuff. And when you get out in the wilderness like that, and you're climbing a mountain, and you're bumping into animals, it is fun. And you know what? It's more fun when you don't feel like you're killing yourself to do it. When you can just go out, you do it, you enjoy it, and the physical activity feels good, not like you're hurting yourself. So that's a motivator. Okay, does exercise really make you smarter? Well, actually it does. And one of the more technical terms I'm going to give you today is called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. If it's okay, I won't repeat brain-derived neurotrophic factor anymore. And what that really means is this is a substance, a chemical that's in the brain. It's a fairly complicated chemical. It's more of a polypeptide that's in the brain, and it does some really incredibly important things. First of all, it promotes the growth of brain cells and new brain cells. When I went to medical school back in the Middle Ages, we were taught that what you got for brain cells, you got at birth, and you never got any new ones. That's not true. We do build new brain cells, and that's an incredibly powerful new idea. And that's how people sometimes make dramatic recoveries from strokes. And what we know now is that exercise will in fact do that, but BDNF is a major, major factor in that. Moreover, once you build a new brain cell, if the BDNF goes away, that brain cell will die. You've got to have ongoing BDNF stimulation for those new brain cells for them to continue to grow. And lastly, brain cells work because they talk to other brain cells. Those are the connections. And if you don't have BDNF around, you won't get those connections built the way they're supposed to. So this is an incredibly important piece. Okay? This leads to what we call that brain plasticity, which we now know is a very real phenomenon. Now, we also know that people with Alzheimer's have very low levels of BDNF. We know that people with post-brain injury will have very low levels of BDNF. There's a lot of research going on now to how can we stimulate this to increase. Can we, in fact, control some of these diseases by stimulating that? We know that people who are depressed have low levels of BDNF. It's another huge area of research because, again, this may be a whole new mechanism of depression that isn't understood right now and give us a whole new mechanism for treatment. But it also plays right back into what I said earlier. People who exercise tend to be less depressed. And why is that? Well, we know in mice that exercise boosts BDNF levels, and they actually run their mazes faster and better when they have high BDNF levels than when they don't. Now, that's in the brain. We haven't really checked the brains of humans a lot because people are a little bit resistant to that. But what we do know is that exercise and the studies on exercise very clearly do help. Learning and memory clearly improve. People who exercise boost scores on their tests after 6 months of exercise. They did a really interesting study of people learning Italian. And people who exercised for 30 minutes, then studied their vocabulary, retained their vocabulary 20% more words than the people who didn't. Okay? So we know that that's true. A couple comments about the commitment. We're a particularly social group. We like getting together like this. Exercising with other people can make a difference. So having an exercise companion will increase your ability to stick with it. There's the phenomenon of social contagion. When one member of a social group starts getting a little overweight, everybody else tends to catch it, particularly if that tends to be the group leader. Well, be the group leader. And within your group, start the exercise. Make that a social contagion phenomenon. Okay. You can barely see it, but there's my dog. And I'm using my dog to make one other point. There was a really interesting study that took people and put them into groups. They had a social group over here for exercising, and the other group was assigned a pet. At the end of 6 months, the group with the pet exercised more than the group with the social group. And I can tell you that's true. When she sees me putting on my shoes to go running, she goes nuts. And if I decide, like Monday, when it was really cold, I was going to wait till the afternoon, she followed me around all day long, moping, like, when are we going on our run? It's never too cold. It's never too wet. It's never too muddy. It's always time to go. So it's an incredible motivator. Okay, so those are the goals. Set a goal, find a friend, take your pet, vary your exercise, and have fun. Okay, thank you.
I think we're ready to start. And I'm Kirk, as was introduced earlier, and I do appreciate your attention. I really thank Alex and Jennifer for the invitation to come out, and to you award winners, congratulations. This is cool. This is good stuff. I like doing cool and good stuff, especially with people that understand it, want to do some things. I hope what I have to share today will actually encourage you, particularly to the employers that are in the room, to really answer the question, how serious are you about this? And so I'm going to take you there in just a few minutes. But again, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you for allowing a bobcat to come into Grizz country. But the way our men's basketball team's playing today, I'm sure you would invite us back on any weekend, right? But I got to warn you, I went out for a run yesterday outside my home. Three Forks is where I live, just west of Three Forks along the banks of the Missouri River. And I came home, did some drills, and I took my watch off. And for the first time that I can ever remember, I forgot to put my watch back on. So that means I got all afternoon, right? No, sorry. Don't rush for the door. But thank you. I appreciate your time today. We're going to look at three questions. One, from an employer's perspective, and I appreciate the comments that were referenced from Professor Dumke and Dr. Shepard. They're right on. I'm going to add an element, though, that's going to be more directed to employers. And that first question right there is a question I love to ask employers. Most of my work takes me across the border into Wyoming, working with the Cowboy State, working with employers there. It's a contract we have with their Department of Health, engaging employers, moving employers ahead, and in promoting worksite health promotion and wellness. And that's always where I start. Last year, I had the opportunity to do one-on-one direct consultation from small companies up to big companies. I asked 24-some companies why, and not a one of them could answer that. I always got responses like, well, we do this and we do that. No, no, no. Why are you doing that? So today, I'm going to challenge you to begin this process of answering the question as an employer, why? Because this sounds involved. It sounds like we're changing human behavior. It sounds kind of messy. But I'm going to show you some very good reasons why. Second thing is what works. I'm going to share with you 3 case studies of employers right here in Montana that are on the bus. They're down the trail. We're trying to catch up with them, and I'm going to show you their results and their what we call the ROI. And then lastly, I'm going to issue that challenge. But before we do, as I travel around, I like to pack my digital camera. And I was in Missoula, and I really enjoy coming in Missoula. You guys are leading in so many initiatives. But as I was out and about and traversing your sidewalks, and I do like to run, I was over on Higgins, and I caught this guy taking a little bit of a break, and he must have been cutting some lodgepole pine up in the Rattlesnake, and he was transporting via his bicycle all the things. And I thought, man, that guy's innovative. I love it. He's combining his commercial activities with his bike. And then I think this picture was from Orange Street. And I found this guy. This guy's into recycling. And I thought, you Missoulians, man, you really lead it all. This is way cool. I love Missoula. But the real kicker comes, I think this guy was on reserve, which sometimes you're taking your life in your own hands. I understand that. But this guy, how do we spell entrepreneur? And I love this picture. But what I really love this picture is this guy's reaction to this guy here. So anyway, I hope we can have a little fun as we're trying to promote the alternative transportation here in Montana, and again, and particularly Missoula. Congratulations to your Missoula in Motion. I'm going to talk to them about it as a resource you employers have to reach out. Before we do that, though, how dependent are you on your employee performance to sustain your operations? What are the costs associated with employee health and productivity? How serious are you about this? And ultimately, the answer impacts your ability to remain a viable, productive, and profitable business, knowing that you are going to rely 100% on your employees' performance. And we've got the data now to directly connect their performance, their productivity, with your operational costs, and that's where I'm going to go. However, I got to warn you, I was trained in academia, and at times it's difficult for me to kind of squash good data and good research. And for the sake of time today, could I offer this? I've got some data slides that I'm going to show you, but could I just do a real high flyover with these? I don't want to. Here's what I'll do is I'll get these slides to Alex. And if you're interested in the slides and the citations that go with them, because I want to give credit where credit's due for those pioneers within our industry that have really established quantifiable reasons for employers to get active in this area, I'll get these slides to Alex. So if you'll grant me the privilege of just doing some high flyovers, could we do that? One of the first things I like to do is look at a bottom line impact, and typically when I start working with employers, they can tell me their pharmacy costs, their claims costs, their administration costs of their medical plans and their health plans. But I'm here to tell you that's about 25% of the identifiable costs. The other 75% come in these areas: presenteeism and absenteeism, illness, disability, etc. Now, before we go any farther, this word right here, presenteeism, I was in a workshop in this very building about 6 years ago, and I asked this question, what is presenteeism? This lady in the front row shot her hand up and says, I know what it is. I said, well, what is it? And she defined it as this, and I've used it ever since: at work, but not really. And then what a great description of presenteeism. Either I'm sick, so sick that I'm not productive and I'm coughing and hacking and spewing my germs around everybody else, or life at home is so challenging that my mental health or my emotional health is there, it's not here. And what's cool now is that we have tools, quantifiable tools, for you to assess the presenteeism impact in your costs and your ability to remain a profitable business. And I'll go there very briefly. Now, I'm going to summarize this real quickly. I think Professor Dumke touched on this. And this study came out in 2001. They studied about 35,000 individuals. They took what's called that health risk assessment. And what they did is they controlled for what we call single risk factors, from mental health all the way down to obesity. Here's what they found. Somebody with mental health as a risk had 150% more likely, compared to somebody who wasn't, of being absent from work, and then so on, with the back pain, the stress, the no exercise, and obesity. So there's some very quantifiable reasons there whenever you compare somebody without that risk to somebody with that risk for why you as an employer are impacted by these certain health risks that your employees bring to work every day. The second area, and this is Dr. Shirley Musich's work out of Michigan. She took the Xerox Corporation, studied them for 3 years, and she wanted to see what the impact was on health risks with their work comp costs. And I'm so glad she did her research. Over 3,000 employees, studied them over 3 years, and here's what she found. Here's your takeaway. Those people, those employees, Xerox, that had high health risks also had high work comp risks. And those that had low health risks had low work comp costs. And your takeaway is this, is that we try and compartmentalize all this in just a health plan cost, whether it's New West or Blues or whatever. And folks, I'll tell you, you get the whole deal. So I appreciate her research, and I use it often. Presenteeism, there was a study that came out just a few years ago. It came out of Harvard, and what they did was they were able to quantify the impact on presenteeism. And I just ran some numbers. I said if you have an employee earning $50,000 in compensation and benefits, and they are high risk, meaning they've got 5 or more risk factors. I didn't say diagnosis. So risk factors, if you plug that into their annual benefits and comps, that employer's impact financially is $5,250 or $5,250 annually. So again, what I'm trying to do is carve out reasons for you as an employer to be engaged in and interested in and realize that whatever you do, you are paying a price for the health risks and the behaviors of your employees. Here's one of my favorite slides, though. This came out in late 1998 by Louis Yen and others out of the University of Michigan. And here's what they did, was they took a 5-year study, and in that first year they had everybody take a health assessment. They categorized people in low, medium, and high. And here's what I want to do, is I want to start with that back graph, is those people that tested high were costing this particular company about $6,000 a year. Those are $1,998. And they didn't do anything about their health risks. They kept driving without seatbelt, they kept not exercising, they kept smoking, whatever it was. Their costs went up pretty significantly. There was a second group of those high-risk people that they said, okay, I'll start wearing my seatbelt, I'll start exercising, I'm going to try and quit smoking, etc. And over 5 years, their costs went significantly down. But here's the third group that really set us all back, those that, like myself, are trained in exercise science, and we just thought if we could get the whole world exercising, it would be a happier place. Well, here's what we found, is that we had forgotten about this group right here, and those people are these people right here. So over 5 years, those people that were low risk, they stayed low risk over 5 years because why? Because their health mattered, their health was important, and so they took care of their risks, they stayed low risk, etc., and their costs were what? They were flat. So what this did for us, gave us good reasons in everything we do as an employer to start identifying our low risk people and give them reasons to stay low risk. Because typically when I start working with companies and brokers and et cetera, they'll bring out all these boy, we had a $2 million claim on this heart, and we had $150,000 on this, and they're chasing these diagnoses, they're chasing these treatments, et cetera. And that's real. If you said, Kirk, where's my money best spent? I will tell you where it is. It's this right here, is identifying who's low risk and keeping or giving them reasons to stay low risk. Wellness is not diagnosis. Wellness is not treatment. Wellness is prevention. And so often we get pulled over onto that treatment. That's Dr. Shepard's area. He's trained physician. Wellness is prevention. So I like this slide. It really shows us, and I'm going to challenge you right now as you mature your reasons for people to take alternative methods of transportation and hike and bike and run to work, whatever, that you're really carving out who's your low-risk people, give them reasons to stay low risk. Well, what's preventable? If you were to ask me, okay, of all these costs, what's preventable? Well, this is Anderson's work. It came out in 2000, and they studied about 46,000 people. What they found were what I call the Big Seven. And they found for these particular companies that were represented in this 46,000 that there were 7 elements to all of their costs that were attributable to lifestyle, behavior, etc. And it really represented a good 25% of all of their costs were completely preventable. And most of the colleagues I work with like to use the number 60 to 70% of modifiable if we could just get people to attend to these 7 right here. If you're talking $1 million that you spend a year in healthcare claims, that's a pretty sizable number. So again, I like to show this slide to just answer the question, what's preventable? So what works? This is point number 2 on the agenda. What are other industry leaders doing to improve employee health and productivity? Answer, it starts with senior management leadership that produces a healthy culture. The key is to modify the workplace culture to support a healthy and productive population. And I take that from Dr. D. Eddington. He's one of the leading researchers in our whole industry. And by the way, he's coming to Montana. And what I would like to do now is pass out some save the date cards. I don't care where they end up. He's coming to Helena at the request of, if we could just pass these around, coming at the request of our Montana Worksite Health Promotion Coalition. He's coming in May, I think May 11. He's going to provide an intensive workshop. He's going to base the majority of his workshop on this book right here. If you said, okay, Kirk, I understand it. I understand Dr. Shepard. I understand Professor Dumke. I understand you. Give me one piece of evidence. Give me one book to read. This would be at the top of my read list. And it's called Zero Trends. And what it is, it's a compilation of all of Dr. Eddington's research written in a very layman-friendly, understandable format. And if you want to get an autographed copy, then come to the workshop in May in Helena. And by the way, that's a little bit of an infomercial, no money exchanged, for your Montana Work-Life Wellness Coalition. And we're here to help you. We've got resources for you to tap into, and some of you, I'm guessing in this room, have been either an award recipient or a participant in one of our past workshops. Dr. Eddington likes to use 5 fundamental pillars. 1, drive the vision. I'll interpret these in just a moment. Create the supportive environment. Formulate your objectives. In other words, answer why. Reward and encourage. And then the 5th one is provide quality assurance. Let me interpret those. Number 1, senior and executive level support. Now here I'm starting to tip my hand on successful engagement of employers. Make sure that it's a bona fide business strategy. Make sure you're defined your objectives, match appropriate industry models, and reward accordingly. Now, I want to buzz through this real quick because I just got the high five sign. Let me go here. Typically, somebody will call me and say, Kirk, help me. My health plan just gave me a 38% rate increase. I need your help. We did this wellness stuff, and it didn't help our claims at all. And we'll all say, well, what did you do? Well, we did a health newsletter. And we had a vegetarian table at the July 4th picnic. How come our claims keep going up? And here's the disconnect, is that company thought they were doing wellness when in reality the impact potential was misaligned. I'm going to really smoke through this. This is a do nothing, wait for people to get sick. This is a good level 1, which isn't bad. Good, better level 2, and a best level 3 champion, and that's defined by Dr. Eddington. This is really a culture of sickness and disease. This is really a culture of health. The ROI goes up the farther right that you go. Part of my work in Wyoming is helping employers connect their dots as to where they're at and where they want to get to. Don't leave here today and say, well, Kirk said if I'm not at a level 3, level 1's bad. It's not. I just want to make sure you clearly understand that level 1's okay and here's what my expected return is. So, is this the Clark Fork River before Milltown Dam was removed or after? I like to show this slide because here's what happens is you hire a whole bunch of employees, they come to work for you, you buy a benefits plan from somebody, and then you just wait for people to get sick, and really it's like trying to catch them at the bottom of the waterfall and they crash and burn. This person right over here is the walking well. Man, they love it. They're doing this whether you and I are here or not. This person over here had their heart attack 3 years ago. They lost 65 pounds. They quit smoking, and now they're a poster child. What about the other 80% of our population? That's typically how we've tried to manage our health plan. But if we go to a level 1, we're still going to lose quite a few people, but we're going to start to pull a few more people off to actively be recognized for their behaviors. Second one, or a level better, we're going to pull more people off, and in fact, we're going farther upstream, intervening earlier. We're still going to lose a couple people, but is that not why you have insurance per se? And then level 3, here's what happens, is that we're still going to lose a couple people, but we're going to pull even more people off before they crash and burn with that age thing that Dr. Shepard referenced earlier. So that's a good, I believe it's a good description of level 1, level 2, and a level 3. So what works? Best-in-class companies, the common denominators, they have a benefit design incorporating the consumer. They use incentives and some disincentives. I call it a health credits model. You guys clearly understand a good driver discount, don't you? You clearly understand the discount on your homeowner's policy because you have working smoke detectors, don't you? We have failed on the health side to really create good identifiable reasons for people to be rewarded accordingly, and that's where I admonish the employers I work with to get to. And then senior level support and participation and appropriate resources, and you may have to include outside professional expertise. Here's our case studies. One, we have a school district, we've worked with them for a number of years. We do on-site education, we have an annual health assessment, their reward is a 3% premium rebate, we have 100% participation, we've cut $35,000 from their work comp over the previous 4 years, and our health plans are trending between 4 and 5% below the national average annually. Do you think that works? Do you think their school board, when we come back and says, gee, we need a few more money, they're willing to listen? You bet they are. Why? We've got the data to show it. The second company is a professional company. I'm leaving them anonymous at this point. About 200, 250 employees. Benefits integrated. We incentivized it. We had a health assessment plus some screenings plus physical activity using a health credits model. The reward was around $150. The ROI estimate, when we ran the numbers, was for every dollar this professional company spent, they got $2 return. That was in year one. And third is a medical center. We did on-site education, we did a health assessment, we did some biometric screenings, we gave them a 20% annual premium rebate or credit. We have a 98% participation going. These companies are on the bus. They understand that they've got to ramp this up to a serious level, a high level 2 or even a low level 3. They've got to move above where they were at, and that was at a level 1. Level 1 wasn't getting the job done. So anticipated outcomes, we know that health risks are going to decrease and costs are going to follow. In other words, you increase your health risks, costs are going to go up. Employers are healthy, morale and self-esteem improved. ROI then, if you're operating at a level 2, the meta-analysis from the industry leaders show that for every dollar you spend, you should get about a $3 return. If you're operating at a level 3, you should be getting about over a $6 return. So what can I begin doing now? Get help. Changing human behavior is not easy and it's not simple. Use available resources. Missoula in Motion, your Montana Worksite Health Promotion Coalition, and qualified benefit partners. And we do a lot of work all across Montana and Wyoming and other states, and Western States Insurance, Lindsay Fisher, we do a lot of work with their office. They're on the bus. They've gone and gotten extra certification. We enjoy working with them because they're able to engage their customers, their employers, and we're able to impact a bigger population. So not everybody who's hanging a wellness shingle has worksite wellness associated with it. Just a little word of caution. Thirdly, create that culture of health, rewarding accordingly for physical activity. You know, we can all reference the numbers about obesity as an epidemic, diabetes is an epidemic, etc. Folks, I'm here to tell you, I think we've got an epidemic of physical inactivity. If we could just get people moving and rewarding accordingly, I think a lot of those other numbers would start to slide. So, my favorites, I like to see tobacco or the attempt to quit recognized. That's a big one, fairly simple to do, totally legal. Physical activity, and then an annual health assessment, and then there's a whole cadre of others that are unique to you. They're unique to your organization, they're unique to your resources, they're unique to your environment and your culture. I don't have a cookie cutter for you. The school district that I was working with out of Cheyenne the other day is going to be a whole lot different than the hospital I was working with in Cody. Why? Because they got a different demographic set, they got different resources, etc. So, health is hard because life is easy. Thank you, Steve Bodain. Presentation at Mayo Clinic last year, and I believe he's right, and really what he's getting at is that we have such a sedentary workforce these days that now our health is hard because we've made life so easy. And I like that reference, and with that, I'm down to 1 minute, right? Yes. Whew. So again, what I'm going to encourage you to do is answer the question, how serious are we about this? Find qualified professionals to work with that have been trained and have an experience or a track record behind them to help guide you through this process, and I do believe those resources are out there. I want to encourage you, though, good luck. It can be done, and as an employer, you can be the first one in line to reap the results of that. Missoula in Motion, thank you. I appreciate your time today.
Questions? We've got a few minutes for questions. Really? Okay, here's my question. Okay, we're a small company with really limited budget for health promotions. What's going to give us our biggest bang for our buck starting out? What are those little baby steps we can start with? And all three of you, what do you think? What would you suggest? Anybody?
Well, Kirk probably has the most sort of salient background in this, but you know, I think what we talked about and why a lot of us are here is doing the small things to encourage activity both to and at work, and I think that was kind of the point that I was trying to get across, but I think both of these guys will have something to say.
Well, from a purely economic point of view, the biggest single bang for your buck is to keep people from smoking. It's better than exercise. I hate to say that, but it's absolutely true. That said, it's also very difficult to get people to quit. But we really encourage employers to increase their smoking cessation benefits by paying for smoking cessation help. Montana Quit Line is an incredibly great free resource unless it gets cut by the legislature, which it's already done. In which case it won't be a great, incredible resources. And so if you have an opportunity, I'm going to put in my one and sole political plug today. Please contact your legislators and tell them you want the quit line reinstated. It's an incredibly great resource and has the highest quit rate. It's one of the top 5 quit lines in the country. That said, if you have very little resources and don't want to increase or you don't have smokers in your fact, then clearly the next best thing is to increase the ability of physical exercise.
I can't agree with or disagree with any of those points, and I like the emphasis on the non-tobacco. The first thing I would ask you to do, though, is why are you trying to do this at all, and really identify that objective, because that's going to drive then your actions. But giving credit for tobacco cessation or a non-smoker, I do believe is just literally a no-brainer. And then work with the health plan providers. Many of them have resources for you to use. It may not produce claims savings. Again, I think we saw that from the slides, is that we really need to be up at a high level 2 or a low level 3 before we get there, but that doesn't excuse not doing things at a level 1. And I like level 1 if you realize we have limited resources, and that's okay, knowing that the culture you create is going to significantly influence that behavior. And I'm working with a group right now out of Sheridan, Wyoming, 18 employees. We've got 100% participation right now. And what they did is they went back and they redesigned their benefits plan to get to appropriate behavior and appropriate recognition. And they didn't have to lay out a dime. All they did was change some deductibles, some premium incentives, etc. And so they're leveraging a benefit structure to get appropriate behavior. So that's always an option.
Other questions? Go ahead and repeat the question.
The case that you make when you add together the 3 presentations in one seems just absolutely, totally inarguable. Any person that sees that should probably come to the conclusion, gee, I think I want to get active here, without requiring any employer leverage or otherwise. What's your take on why people aren't doing what we think they ought to be doing, given the obvious and voluminous amount of information that's out there already?
Yeah, health is hard because life is easy. And I appreciate that, and I'll repeat real quick and I'll summarize. The question is, well, geez, if this makes so much sense, why aren't people kind of doing it on their own? Why aren't they self-motivated, et cetera? And, you know, there's just a myriad of reasons out there why we get busy. We have busy lives. We pack so much into our days. We really devalue and really we just devalue the opportunity to exercise and reap those results. And now we're starting to talk about human behavior. We're starting talking about social influence, et cetera. And I wish I had a lot of the reasons. However, I'm going to pass this on. I think one of the things that we've done is that we've not created the right incentives for people to be rewarded accordingly. We've created a disease and sickness model that's rewarded versus a culture of health.
When you look at what we know about behavioral economics, what you're asking people to do is to pay an immediate price for a future gain. And people don't do that. We don't pay immediate costs for future gains very often. We have to really be convinced that that's the right thing to do. So the economic model is totally wrong. Some of us do it anyway because we can be more long-sighted than that. The second thing I want to do is more of a joke. It's a little bit of a brutal joke, so hang with me for just a second. But the doctor says to the patient, you've got to exercise 5 hours a week. And the patient says, where in the world, in my busy schedule, am I going to have time to exercise for 5 hours a week? And the doctor looks back and says, well, let me ask you what fits into your busy schedule better. 5 hours a week of exercise or 24 hours a day of being dead?
The question is a great one. Amen, brother. It's a frustrating response. It's really hard to watch, and I think the other speakers have had good points. We have developed a culture of that rewards physical inactivity, and from Super Bowl on Sunday to other recreations that haven't promoted physical activity. So I guess I don't have a great answer. But it goes back to my earliest point about how employers can be that first line of defense in that behavior, and adjusting that behavior and maybe reframing worldviews that think otherwise.
So we should have the company bike where we now have the smoking shelter and move the smoking shelter about 2 miles.
Or get rid of it altogether.
There's a question over here.
My question's for Kirk. I think alone, but maybe other addressing you allowed to. But when you ask why, can you give an example of the best response you've gotten and the worst response you've gotten?
Okay, I'll try and make this real succinct. I'll rephrase the question is that why, what's the best question I've ever received and what's one of the poorest questions I've ever received? After a little coaching and after a little steerage, there's a large school district in Wyoming right now that I'm working with, and I've worked with them for a year now. And we're now to a point where they're beginning to answer the question, why? And they came up with 2 objectives. One touches on identifying their low-risk people and giving them reasons to stay low-risk, i.e. knowing that they're going to drive much of the productivity and much of the balance on their healthcare plan, and they want to give reasons to stay low-risk. So that, bar none, has probably been one of the best answers. One of the poorest answers went into a realm of, they immediately started in on, well, we got to change how people eat. And we've got to make them exercise. And we've got to make them do things. And I stopped them. I said, you can't make anybody do anything. I said, there will be incredible resistance. And that's why I'm in the camp of, we've got one group, I didn't show you today, but they've gone into, per HIPAA law, they've gone into a standards-based criteria where if your cholesterol is here and your blood pressure's here, you're going to qualify for the reward. And in their environment, it works. We cautioned them, we got good legal counsel, we're doing it right. But it was a delicate balance because the majority of us don't like to be told what to do. However, if you create a bigger carrot in front of me, okay, now I've got my reasons why. So that's an example of the best I've heard and probably the worst I've heard. I love the question. It's the first time I've ever gotten it. Congratulations.
The point you made about the roads up in the Appalachians kind of really speaks to me. And I want to know about when you talk to the employers, is there some element of conveying a message of how they should be engaged with their municipalities and their agencies locally to encourage creating those kind of spaces in the world around us for, say, sidewalks and trails and bike lanes? And so what kind of messaging do you convey to the employers, and then what seems to sell the best? What resonates with them about that type of message?
Oh, geez, they gave it to me. Yeah, as far as how to get employers involved in that, I can comment, I'm still thinking about that part of it, but I can comment on there's a very active area of research in the development of municipalities and how that affects human physical activity. Kind of going back to, we see the evidence, why aren't people doing it? And I think there's a disconnect between behaviors and outcomes in American psyche. And I'm not a human behaviorist, but to the person who ran into the tree, it wasn't while driving. It wasn't because they're drunk, it was because the roads were slippery, you know. But back, you know, this can go back to, I guess it's the 60s when we started to create residential areas that had driveways and no sidewalks, and we moved out of downtowns into suburbia, and downtown areas across the country died, right? We had big malls and people drove to the malls and took escalators and all of that. That corresponds directly with an elevated rise in obesity and a lot of these other physical inactivity diseases. Now, how employers can get involved with that perhaps speaks to what a lot of people in this room are doing. The city of Missoula keeping downtown active and keeping the sidewalks, you know, available to people to use. And, you know, other people in this room promoted bike lanes, and a lot of the nominations have to do with bike racks and other things that are promoting those. So the thinking in Missoula seems to be there. Now, how somebody in perhaps other communities where there isn't sort of momentum in that direction can do that can be very difficult, but certainly would be an active task at hand. And I don't know if the other speakers have a comment on that.
Well, the only comment I would make is that this, I think, moves over into the realm of politics and public health and what we do. And there's a national group called Transportation for America, or T4 America, and you can Google that group and do that. And they're working hard on the transportation bill, which hopefully will wind its way through Congress, and trying to get the transportation bill to increase the dollars that are available for non-vehicular movement through community. Clearly, you need to work with the city commission and the mayor's office, the county commission, whatever the appropriate entity is. My experience with working with commissioners, at least in Helena, and I work with them on a lot of issues over the years, is that whenever we come together where the public interest and the business community's interest all begin to line up, they are eager to help. You know, it's kind of, I'm the leader, which way do they go? They really do like that when everybody's behind it, because that's a win-win-win. So I think it's really important not for us to have a dialogue around this stuff, and to understand that if we have the national level providing some funding, we need to work with the state government to provide funding, because the Montana Department of Transportation governs a lot of the rules around the highway. The city streets that are actually highways are controlled by MDT. And then we have the city streets. And for us to take an antagonistic view doesn't work. But I think if everybody gets in the same room and starts talking about what we want our communities to look like, this becomes a political problem that's quite solvable.
And just real quickly, I'm going to challenge the employers in this room to collect your voice and work through entities like Missoula in Motion to really bring this issue to the forefront of, if we're going to challenge employees, alternative forms of transportation, get some exercises, safety is a very critical issue that we need to address. Otherwise, we're all riding bikes in Appalachia with no shoulders. And we know what's going to happen there, and then we're going to have a fatality or two. And then that's going to be that negative side of the equation. Let's get ahead of it, be proactive, and use a voice collectively like what you've got here. And honestly, folks, you're an anomaly. I work with a lot of communities across the West, and there's very few of them that have the synergy and the energy and the resources going like what you've got here in Missoula.
We have time for one last question.
Particularly for Dr. Shepard, and I know the focus here has been on employers and economics of good health. But my concern is more community health and the transportation aspects and the youth. And I'm wondering if in your work with the Wyoming School District, is anybody anywhere doing research and the figures and the benefits to somehow reach our high school kids enamored of their cars?
I'd say the short answer to that is yes. People, and Chuck may also want to address this a little bit. Certainly the school systems are becoming increasingly aware of the advantages of physical activity. Chuck showed some of the data that shows that kids are more active, score better. The high school in Naperville, Illinois scored the highest and was the only U.S. school that scored in the top 10 in the world in science and math. They routinely schedule kids in their most difficult courses to take that class immediately after their gym class. They do that on purpose. Why? To take care of that 1 to 2 hour boost in BDNF that you get from exercise in the learning process. It's an amazing idea. It's hard to say that that's cause and effect, but Naperville, it's a middle class community. It's not a high-end, wealthy neighborhood. So I think the short answer is yes. There are answers that are known, but back to the previous question, it becomes now a question. We as citizens of our community who elect our school boards need to get to work with the school board saying, this is something that the school systems have a need to address. And let me give one other example. We've done exactly that in tobacco use and tobacco prevention. Again, part of the state tobacco use prevention program is a highly effective school education program. We've dropped the youth smoking rate in the state of Montana from 27% to 15% in the last 10 years. That's a hugely successful program that's largely due to involving the schools in the education. We can do the same thing with exercise. We just have to put the community effort behind it.
Have you seen the movie American Graffiti? Sorry. It has to do with the fact that I think teenagers have been enamored with cars since cars have been around. So I don't know if we'll get rid of that, but it kind of relates back to the earlier question about, the structure of our communities, and in reference to what some of Bob said, including with our schools, school councils, and city councils, and providing opportunities for non-vehicular traffic. One thing I kind of thought of, since that last question is there are grants out there that can be pursued from nonprofit agencies to develop these sort of alternatives, places like rail to trails to convert old railroad beds into walking, biking routes. And I know Missoula already has a lot of that in place, but that's just one example of potential money out there that can be pursued to make non-vehicular traffic more likely to be chosen by any age group, including hopefully teenagers. I do know that in a lot of areas, and this is kind of referring more to the students at University of Montana and higher education, that freshmen are not allowed to bring cars to school. And that's been an alternative in high schools as well, is you're not allowed to bring a car to school. And they limit that maybe to seniors, or they limit that completely. And they usually use parking as an excuse, but maybe students' health could be an equal excuse.
I say it's kind of the changing of the guard. Please don't forget, you've got evaluation forms on your table. If you take a few moments and fill those out and return them to the basket. I'm delighted now to move on to the second part of our day. I'll be turning the podium over to Alex, who'll be working on the awards section of our presentation. So,
I am Alexandria Stockman and the program supervisor for Missoula in Motion. And today, thanks to the expertise of our panelists, we have heard about the benefits of exercise for both businesses and the people who staff them. Transportation can be a part of the solution because the way people travel shapes our community and affects our levels of physical activity. We recognize that transportation is a public health opportunity. Missoulians want options now and for future generations. They want to be able to be more physically active on streets that are friendlier to pedestrians and bicyclists. And when we model physical activity, our kids also see it and they get it too. Everywhere I go, I hear that this is what our community wants. In fact, walking and biking have increased nationally by 25% in the last 10 years. In Missoula, our businesses and community leaders also get the importance of activity and the role of transportation. Through our Transportation Best Practices Award, Missoula in Motion recognizes and rewards these role models who have created proactive programs. Our nominees have integrated healthy practices and active transportation into their business plans, employee benefit programs, and community initiatives. I am happy to share with you their innovative transportation programs, projects, and policies that save money, reduce emissions, ease traffic congestion, alleviate parking pressure, and improve the health of employees and customers, and can easily be replicated by your organizations. I invite the nominees to come forward and receive a certificate as I describe their activities. The Downtown Streetscape Consortium. Come on. The consortium consists of the City of Missoula and its Public Works Department, Missoula Redevelopment Agency, Missoula Parking Commission, Missoula Downtown Business Improvement District, Missoula Downtown Association, WGM Group, Western Excavating, and Knife River. The first on-street project of the unanimously approved Downtown Master Plan, the North Higgins Streetscape Improvement Project, was completed in October of 2010. With $1.25 million of American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funding, as well as some Community Transportation Enhancement Program funding, the project brought a significant number of organizations, as you see here, and businesses together to design and build 3 blocks of downtown. The project significantly improves the bicycle and pedestrian experience in downtown. The project shows creativity, a willingness to think outside traditional streetscapes, and reinforces the belief that biking and walking are important and valid forms of transportation. Thank you. Ecology Project International. EPI staff members share responsibility for their monthly commuting contests, including an October costume contest and December food commute drive. There's a high level of participation amongst employees in the Missoula in Motion Way to Go Club and Momentum programs. EPI employees receive a daily bonus and award for their greatest number of sustainable commutes. Sustainable transportation is very visible and apparent. Each day, employees post their means of transportation. A communal bicycle is parked in the front of the building, and bus schedules are on display on the information board and a frequented public location. Staff bicycles are also available at their satellite offices in Mexico and Ecuador. Staff at the Missoula office model sustainability for other organizations that share the Swift Building location. Congratulations. Garden City Gondola. By providing a sustainable transportation option, they are able to not only meet a transportation need within the community, they are able to educate and model sustainable transportation practices. From the creation of the pedicabs, hand-built from recycled bike parts and repurposed materials, to the pay-what-you-can fee schedules, everyone is transported regardless of their ability to pay. Sustainability is built into all their practices and decisions. Patrons' use of the gondolas reduce greenhouse gas emissions, decrease traffic congestion, and alleviate parking pressure. The gondola's presence on the street acts as a constant and visual reminder of bicycling as a viable and economically sound transportation practice. The Holiday Inn downtown at the park. The hospitality industry is not often synonymous with sustainable transportation, but the Holiday Inn expands beyond a traditional mission to incorporate sustainable transportation into their practices. From flexible scheduling to the provision of bus passes for associates, the Holiday Inn facilitates their employees' use of sustainable transportation. Their location makes walking, biking, and busing a feasible option for both employees and guests, and they routinely allow their parking lot to be used for overflow special events special event parking, and then donate the proceeds to local nonprofits. Sustainable commuting is also enhanced by the recent placement of additional bike racks, and the Holiday Inn decreases the need for transportation by using locally grown products whenever possible, recycling paper and plastic, and participating regularly in webinars to avoid unnecessary travel. Missoulians on bicycles. Moby expanded their group rides to include century or 100-mile training rides for the inaugural Cycle for the Symphony, a 118-mile fundraiser. By taking cyclists on extended rides in and around Missoula, including rides on the shoulders of I-90 and Highway 93, cyclists gained confidence and could see themselves as bicycle commuters instead of merely recreational riders. The Missoula Osprey. The Missoula Osprey have been encouraging fans, players, and employees to use sustainable transportation to attend games for over 10 years. Team members use carpools and vanpools to get to the stadium for games. They also receive instruction and assistance with riding the bus and bicycling around Missoula. Partnering with Missoula in Motion, the Osprey provides substantial ticket discounts and benefits for fans that arrive at games via bicycles. In addition to savings for fans, the Osprey supports sustainable transportation, infrastructure, and enhancements like bike racks with proceeds from the Bicycle Club. The Osprey have implemented a sustainable transportation plan for large events like concerts that include the use of downtown park and ride locations. This plan encourages patrons to dine local and utilize existing parking infrastructure downtown, then either walk or bus to the stadium. Missoula Parking Commission. Excuse me. Since 1984, the Parking Commission has included in their mission to provide and manage parking alternatives that support sustainable transportation. From providing funding to organizations that promote sustainable transportation, like the Missoula Valley Transportation Management Association and Missoula in Motion, to funding programs that alleviate parking pressure downtown, like the MDA Easy Pass, Out to Lunch, Saturday Market, First Night Missoula shuttles, the Parking Commission has been a leader in the use of sustainable transportation. By providing 6 free designated carpool spaces in the Woody lot, they provide a substantial cost savings for downtown carpoolers. The Parking Commission also encourages the use of bicycles through bike lockers in Central Park and the placement of bike racks and bike corrals in parking spaces downtown. Thank you. Mountain Line. Now, of course, Mountain Line does more than what I'll say here, but their application was on their bus bench program. Following a zoning code update, Mountain Line was able to partner with the City and County Health Department and Missoula Aging Services to replace old, worn-out bus bench backs with graffiti-resistant community service messaging. The infrastructure improvement enhances the positive experience of riding public transportation and hopefully encourages additional use of sustainable transportation. It also allows organizations to show their support of the use of sustainable transportation through their messaging. Thank you. Rocky Mountain School of Photography. Centrally located in downtown, the Rocky Mountain School of Photography encourages the use of sustainable transportation during their annual career training program. They have partnered with the city to install additional bike racks on the perimeter of their Higgins Avenue building. They also encourage their students' use of Mountain Lion through the Easy Pass program and having Mountain Lion provide training rides during their orientation program. Students' liberal use of public transportation during their training program significantly reduces congestion and parking pressure on downtown Missoula during their 3 to 5 month training period. And modes when educating children, families, and their employees. A conscious choice was made to locate their facility on a mountain line bus route and in a very walkable and bikeable part of Missoula on Stevens Avenue. Children and their families are immersed in sustainable transportation through the use of buses and carpools for field trips and general transportation to and from school, and through monthly bike days where students bring their bikes and learn about bicycle safety. The staff modeled the use of sustainable transportation through the use of the Easy Pass program, biking, walking, and carpooling to work. Sustainable transportation is integrated into the curriculum, and its use is the norm at Spirit at Play, not the exception, and that's the key to lifelong adoption of these behaviors. Thank you. Sussex School. Sussex School recently adopted a sustainable transportation plan as part of their campus improvements. This plan includes a family resident map, which shows where Sussex families live around town, which bus lines and bike paths run through those neighborhoods, and includes phone numbers for carpooling contacts. Their location near a mountain line route allows for students to ride public transportation daily. The school has even built flexibility into their end-of-day schedule to allow students to catch the bus. Bike parking has been improved with an addition of new bike racks and indoor bike parking in one of the new buildings. In addition to the use of active and public transportation for field trips, Sussex School owns a 14-seat bus that is used for shuttling students to off-campus learning locations. Lessons about sustainable transportation are embedded into the curriculum so that the message is reinforced every day in a variety of ways throughout the students' enrollment. Thank you. And finally, the USDA Forest Service. The Forest Service provides a $20 a month bicycle subsidy program that is to be used for bike-related expenses, including a new bike, repairs, and parts for anyone who rides to work at least half of the month. They also provide an office bike at the headquarters on Broadway for work-related trips, especially to the UM campus. The Forest Service provides covered bike parking. They also have tools, a floor pump, a bike rack, and an employee to assist with repairs for the office and employee bikes. Thank you. For over 12 years, Missoula in Motion has sponsored the Transportation Best Practices Award. The award is given to Missoula area businesses or organizations that have shown a commitment to our community's transportation. The award showcases how their efforts help resolve community transportation issues by encouraging the use of sustainable transportation like biking, walking, busing, carpooling, and vanpooling. To present the awards and offer their congratulations, I am pleased to introduce the County Commissioners, Jean Curtis, Bill Carey, and Michelle Anquist. Please join me. It's best. And they're in order, yeah, that way. Okay. All right. So without further ado, all right, our business champion with a cash award of $500 is presented to Sussex School. The Business Champion Award recognizes businesses that do things like the following: provide facilities and services for customers and clients, racks, preferential carpool parking, walk-up ride services, make sustainable transportation easier, pictures, handshaking, They promote sustainable transportation to their customers and clients, like Bike Walk Bus Week, educational materials, kiosks, displays, and posters. They adopt business practices, like Sussex School has with their transportation plan, and they recycle, upcycle waste products that would have been otherwise transported. Congratulations, and would you like to say anything?
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And for all your organizations for doing such wonderful work. It's just astounding to be in this room. And it's a lot of work to do. It's a daily process to kind of do that shift. So.
I'm a parent at Sussex School, and I wanted to give a special thank you to Mountain Line. We ride the bus almost every day, and there's about between 8 and 15 kids who ride regularly, and especially to the morning Route 9 bus driver who takes us to Sussex Dale, who's fabulous, and reminds us when we leave mittens on the floor. And it's been great for all of the kids.
Congratulations. All right, the community champion with a cash award of $500 is presented to Spirit at Play. The Community Champion Award recognizes groups that promote education, outreach, workshops and trainings on sustainable transportation, promotes changes that increase the use of sustainable transportation, facilitates events, and improves infrastructure for sustainable transportation. Judy, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, I am just so amazed and excited. I guess I'm just honored to have the privilege to teach at a young age best practices, and hope that by teaching to ride the bus, teaching to read the bus map, how to garden, all of those best practices that they are becoming habits for lifelong learning, and hope to make a difference.
Congratulations. Our employee champion with a cash award of $500 is presented to Ecology Project International. The employee, come on. The Employee Champion Award recognizes businesses that provide incentives to their employees in monies, gifts, and recognition, provide facilities and services for their employees like bike racks, preferential parking, showers, free and discounted bus passes, and make sustainable transportation choices easier for their employees and accommodate the inconveniences. So they provide telecommuting, flexible work schedules, errand vehicles, or bikes, and even if it takes more time. They promote sustainable transportation options and events like Bike Walk Bus Week, the Way to Go Club membership, educational materials, kiosk displays, and posters, and promote a workplace culture from the top-down example. So thank you, Ecology Project International. Kelsey or anyone, do you have?
I'll just say a few words. Thanks so much for all of you just for supporting this community. This is one of the reasons it's great to live, work, raise a family here. All of you guys are pushing these initiatives forward and prioritizing sustainable transportation, so thank you.
Thank you. Those were our three categories, and our judges had a long time to deliberate, and we did come up with also a grand champion. The Best Practices Award Grand Champion with $1,000 to support their program, and are featured in our local media, goes to Garden City Gondola. The Grand Champion Award encompasses all the categories and represents the spirit of the Transportation Best Practice Awards in all their efforts. Congratulations.
Evan, anything you want to write?
It means a lot for us to be recognized, along with all these other groups doing so much work on such a large scale. I think our operation from the outside perspective may appear a bit harebrained. And so it means a lot that people recognize our efforts, what we're doing, because we don't reach as many people as a lot of these other groups. But we really believe in what we do. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess I'd like to say, this may be clear, but the spirit of sustainability and the desire to create a transportation system that's less reliant on fossil fuels has obviously brought everyone here today. And I just want to encourage you guys to keep on doing what you're doing. And hopefully next year in this room we can have even more people. And kudos to Missoula in Motion for doing something like this. You guys are a step ahead of the game as far as the advice that our nice speakers have given today. Creating a cool program to give, to encourage Missoula businesses to do what we're doing. So thank you guys, and thank you, Missoula.
Two of us that couldn't be here today, Steve and Jonas, who are very important to what we do. So, special love to them, and take a rickshaw ride. It's really fun.
Hear, hear.
Okay, because I see it go by.
We're all mad as hell.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations and thank you to our winners and our nominees. This event would not have been possible without the support of our sponsors, Northwestern Energy. Thank you. And Allied Waste Services. Thank you also to our presenters, Charles Dumke, Robert Shepard, and Kirk Keller, for sharing the health and wellness benefits of sustainable transportation. Thank you. I'd also like to thank our anonymous panel of judges for their hard work and deliberation. There are a growing number of businesses and organizations like our nominees and award winners who are providing programs for their employees, services for their customers, and opportunities for the whole community that improve Missoula's air quality, reduce the demands on our roadways and infrastructure, and encourage a healthy lifestyle. Let us know, Missoula in Motion, how we can help you develop an award-winning program. We hope you have enjoyed your time with us today, and please, again, take a minute before you leave to complete the evaluation form and return it to the basket on the registration table. Thank you very much, and get out there and exercise and enjoy your day.